Good day, geographers, and welcome to our lecture series once more in this beautiful subject of geography. I am your host, Donovan Rattray. Now, today we'll be looking at pollution. Now, pollution, pollution is actually the discharge in the environment of toxic substances that are harmful to human health and the ecosystem. Toxic substances. Yes, the word toxic referring to poisonous or harmful. Basically, anything that we discard in the environment that does not provide any benefit to the ecosystem is considered to be poisonous or toxic to the environment. And that in itself is what we call a pollutant. That is, any substance that causes an undesirable change in the physical, chemical, and biological environment. So the act of discharging any of these harmful substances in the environment is what we consider to be pollution. Now, pollution can actually lead to what we call global warming. Now, what is global warming? It's simply the increase of the Earth's average temperature. That is what we call global warming. So let's just say, for example, the Earth's average temperature is 25 degrees Celsius. If it increases 26, 27, even 30 degrees Celsius, that is referred to as global warming because the Earth is getting warmer or hotter, if you want to put it another way. Now, the cause of global warming is what we call the greenhouse effect. Now, if you are familiar with gardening, a greenhouse is actually a mechanism or a structure that actually allows for the sun's radiation or heat to pass through, but it also traps it when it is trying to escape. This can be beneficial to the plants that are in the greenhouse. However, unfortunately, where the Earth is concerned, this is not a good thing because by right, the sun's radiation after entering the Earth's atmosphere is supposed to leave the Earth so that there is a balance in the Earth's temperature or average temperature. However, because of the presence of what we call greenhouse gases, this Earth radiation that is supposed to escape actually gets trapped within the atmosphere, and this causes the atmosphere to get warmer. Hence, we have the problem of global warming. So in essence, boys and girls, the greenhouse effect is the cause of global warming. So the Earth, in a sense, becomes a greenhouse, but not for the nurturing or the growing of plants. No, 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 no. It's basically detrimental to us because it can cause a lot of problems when our Earth's atmosphere is getting warmer. All right, so boys and girls, this is basically illustrating green technology. All right, now green technology involves the use of renewable resources, for example, wind energy, solar energy, as well as hydroelectricity or water energy, right? Energy that we can get from water. But we also have air purification involved in this in the form of planting trees, which are very good at reducing the amount of carbon in the atmosphere by taking in the carbon dioxide as well as releasing oxygen so that we as creatures can also breathe. But it also involves sewage treatment and recycling of electricity, or should I say, yes, recycling as well, and conservation of electricity, and a few, yes, and water purification as well. So this is what we mean by green technology, and just keep all of what I said in mind, because in a video that deals with caring for the earth, if you have not seen it as yet, it speaks volumes about green technology. So you hear me talking about global warming and the greenhouse effect, and you even heard me mention about greenhouse gases. Well, these are the gases or the compounds that contributes to the greenhouse effect. Most of them, or all of them, you basically know. For example, methane, which comes from the rotting of garbage or plants or animals or even animal feces, right? We also have nitrous oxides that are often found in fertilizers or even motor vehicle exhausts. We also have carbon or carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide for that matter, right? That comes from the burning of fossil fuel or garbage. And then we also have chlorofluorocarbons, which are released by aerosols like our spray cans that when you shake them they feel cool, or our cologne bottles, when we shake them they feel cool. That is because it contains chlorofluorocarbon, and every time we use these products that contains it, we are actually releasing chlorofluorocarbons in the atmosphere. That also contributes to global warming. You will also find it in styrofoam containers. You know, those soft, foamy looking containers that we sometimes use to package stuff like new appliances, or even to use as containers to store or to keep hot food or hot beverages. Yes, those contain chlorofluorocarbon as well. That is the reason why whenever you put hot stuff in these containers that are made out of styrofoam, we don't even feel the temperature of these hot beverages or hot meals, because of the chlorofluorocarbon that is present in the material itself. All right. Now, whenever we have environmental issues, people have come up with ingenious ways that are environmentally friendly. They can be modern or just basic approaches that will help our environment. Well, this is what we call green technology. And green technology are the technological processes that we use to protect our environment, or to even revive or repair already damaged ecosystems or environments. So we basically use them not only to protect our environment, but to also revive or to heal our already damaged environment.
For 2.5 million years, the Earth's climate has fluctuated, cycling from ice ages to warmer periods. But in the last century, the planet's temperature has risen unusually fast, about 1.2 to 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Scientists believe it's human activity that's driving the temperatures up, a process known as global warming. Ever since the Industrial Revolution began, factories, power plants, and eventually cars have burned fossil fuels such as oil and coal, releasing huge amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases trap heat near the Earth through a naturally occurring process called the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect begins with the sun and the energy it radiates to the Earth. The Earth and the atmosphere absorb some of this energy, while the rest is radiated back into space. Naturally occurring gases in the atmosphere trap some of this energy and reflect it back, warming the Earth. Scientists now believe that the greenhouse effect is being intensified by the extra greenhouse gases that humans have released. Evidence for global warming includes a recent string of very warm years. Scientists report that 1998 was the warmest year in measured history, with 2005 coming in second. Meanwhile, readings taken from ice cores show that the greenhouse gases carbon dioxide and methane have hit their highest levels in the past 420,000 years. Arctic sea ice is also shrinking, According to NASA studies, the extent of Arctic sea ice has declined about 10% in the last 30 years. As long as industrialized nations consume energy and developing countries increase their fossil fuel consumption, the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere will continue to rise. Researchers predict that temperatures will increase about 2 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit by the end of the century. What's less certain is what rising temperatures mean for the planet. Some climate models predict subtle changes. Others forecast rising sea levels which could flood coastal areas around the world. Weather patterns could change, making hurricanes more frequent. Severe droughts could become more common in warm areas, and species unable to adapt to the changing conditions would face extinction. Although much remains to be learned about global warming, many organizations advocate cutting greenhouse gas emissions to reduce the impact of global warming. Consumers can help by saving energy around the house, switching to compact fluorescent light bulbs, and driving fewer miles in the car each week. These simple changes may help keep the Earth cooler in the future.
Okay, geographers, now let's see if you were listening and paying keen attention to that video. So first of all, what is the estimated temperature range? The average temperature of the Earth has risen in the last century. It is 1.5, or should I say 1.2 degrees Fahrenheit, or should I say 1.2 degrees Fahrenheit to 1.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, if you didn't get that one, let's see if you remember this one. According to the video, what is the reason why temperatures are increasing? All right, human activities. Good work. Good work. Let's try another one. What are the three things that burn fossil fuels? Come on, think hard. Car factories, and power plants. That's our answer. What gas is, or should I say, what gas is released into the atmosphere by the burning of fossil fuels? Think hard, everyone. If you say carbon, well done. What effect is experienced by the Earth as a result of the trapping of heat by gases in the atmosphere? Remember the video, and also remember, I mentioned it earlier, the greenhouse effect. Beautiful. Give three evidence of global warming. Whoa, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. Let's see if you are really, really paying attention. All right, the shrinking of the Arctic sea ice, increased carbon dioxide and methane in the atmosphere, and consecutive warm years. If you got one, well done. If you got if you got two of them, magnificent job. If you got all three, wow, excellent work. So what year was the hottest year in measured history? Ooh, let's see if you were really keen on this one. 1998, and the second highest year recorded was 2005. All right, well done. What changes are most likely to occur as a result of the constant rise in global temperatures? All right, take your time, think. Let's see if you had the answer. Okay, a rise in sea levels. Animal species will become extinct. Yes, nice. One more. Changes in the weather patterns. Yes. Very good. Very good. As you can see, we're getting far more tropical storms and hurricanes than in previous history. And of course, the rainy season in some areas are getting longer and in some areas getting shorter. All right, nice. Well done. How can we play our part in reducing greenhouse gas emissions worldwide? Now, if you were thinking about green technology, then think how we can use the components of green technology to answer this question. One, conserving electricity. Good, good. I hear you thinking. Driving less. Yes. Now, if we don't take care of our environment and keep our environment clean, well, we're only going to leave ourselves prone to be attacked by diseases. Diseases are actually an abnormal condition of the organ which interrupts the normal bodily functions. Most diseases are spread by organisms that actually carries the disease or the viruses that contribute to these diseases. These organisms or creatures are what we call vectors. Now, usually, vectors are often raised or they breed in areas that are highly polluted, especially polluted by garbage. Sounds familiar? All right, let me show you what I'm talking about. So here we have the mosquito and the common housefly. These are examples of vectors. Think about what diseases mosquitoes carry. Are you thinking about yellow fever, dengue fever? Are you thinking about malaria? Are you even thinking about, well, there are other diseases out there, right? So mosquitoes are vectors because they actually carry viruses that contributes to different types of diseases. The common housefly is also a vector because it too carries viruses that can also be passed on to us or even other animals and cause diseases, but mostly to us as human beings because they interact with us more than any other creature. That's another mosquito. This, anybody knows what we call this creature? I'm sure you'll find it on your dogs a lot. Yeah, that is a tick, all right? That too is a vector. And it also carries viruses that it can pass on to us that can also make us sick. If you bathe your dog recently or see your dog scratching very often, it may be because of this little fellow right here. Take a guess. What do you think it is? Yes, if you guessed the flea, you have guessed correctly. This is also a vector. As simple as they are, they are a vector. This little cute creature is what we call a mite. It's a very tiny organism. You don't see it very easily with the naked eye, but it's around. And once it gives you a bite, oh, it's not going to be pretty at all. You are definitely going to get sick once it bites you. Wow, aren't these two? Wow, aren't these two having a grand time? Yeah, rats, right? Anybody knows what disease rats are famous for transmitting? Yes, if you say leptospirosis, you are indeed correct. Yeah, rats tend to breed up a lot in places that are highly polluted with garbage, solid waste as a matter of fact. You'll see them in garbage dumps a lot. But rats are also vectors because they carry leptospirosis, and if they bite you, you're going to get leptospirosis. If they defecate on you or in your food and you ingest their feces, you will get leptospirosis. If they urinate in your container or in your food and you consume it, you will get leptospirosis. So it is pretty wise of you, if you know that you have utensils put down in areas where you know rats can have access to it, it's pretty wise if you rinse it out or wash it out before you actually use it, just to be on the safe side.
Animals are an important part of our world and our lives. Did you know that science estimates there are over 8.7 million animal species around the world, with thousands of new species discovered every year? And with the growing global human population, environmental changes, and increases in animal travel, animals and humans are interacting in new ways. Because animals and humans rely on each other so much, this contact can enable diseases to spread between them. Mosquitoes, fleas, ticks, and sandflies are parasites to animals and humans. And when these parasites spread microscopic organisms, they are called vectors. Diseases like Lyme disease, West Nile disease, Leishmaniasis, and Dirofilaria repens can infect both animals and humans. When an infectious disease is shared between different species, like humans and animals, science calls this zoonosis. Scientists around the world recognize the importance of companion vector-borne diseases and the role animals have in the spread of these diseases. Science even says that 75% of emerging or re-emerging animal diseases can also affect us. And because the health of humans and animals is closely linked,
Okay, now, now that you have seen that video, you have seen what we mean by vectors and how they can be passed from humans to, or should I say, from creatures or humans, or from creatures to humans. Right, that's what I meant to say. All right, and when they are passed from animals to humans, there's a term that is given to it, zoonosis. But it also mentioned too that some of these diseases can be passed from humans to animals as well. So it goes both ways. Now, let's just say we contract a disease from a vector, right? And we pass on this disease to other humans, whether by direct physical contact or indirect physical contact. Like, for example, if we walk into a room and we sneeze and the particulates from which we sneeze are still in the room and somebody walks in the room and inhales it, or maybe we leave bodily fluids on a furniture or some item and somebody comes to use it and touches it. Yeah, that is these kind of diseases that are easily passed on from one person to another are described as communicable diseases. All right, so communicable diseases are a type of disease that is contagious. In other words, they can be passed from one person to another. All right, and it's usually transferred by an individual who is infected and passed on to someone who is not infected, but eventually will become infected once they get in contact with that person, whether directly or indirectly.
Going to take a look at what communicable diseases are, what causes them, and how they are transmitted. Communicable diseases, or most commonly known as infectious diseases, are diseases that can be spread from one person to another and can cause a large number of people to get sick. They are caused by germs like bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, or toxins. But how are communicable diseases spread? There are two ways communicable diseases can be spread: through direct contact or indirect contact. Direct contact transmission occurs when there is physical contact between an infected person and a susceptible person. Indirect contact transmission occurs when there is no direct human-to-human contact. Infectious diseases are often spread through direct contact. The types of direct contact include the following: person-to-person contact. Infectious diseases are commonly transmitted through person-to-person contact. Transmission occurs when an infected person touches or exchanges body fluids with someone else. This can happen before an infected person is aware of the illness. Sexually transmitted diseases and HIV can be transmitted this way: mother to unborn child. A pregnant woman may pass germs that cause infectious diseases to her unborn baby. Some germs can pass through the placenta. Germs in the vagina can be transmitted to the baby during birth. Droplet spread. The spray of droplets during coughing and sneezing can spread an infectious disease. You can even infect another person through droplets created when you speak. Since droplets fall to the ground within a few feet, this type of transmission requires close proximity. Infectious diseases can also be spread indirectly through the air and other mechanisms. For example, airborne transmission. Some infectious agents can travel long distances and remain suspended in the air for an extended period of time. You can catch some diseases simply by breathing. These are called airborne diseases. You can catch a disease like measles by entering a room after someone with measles has departed. Other diseases that spread through the air are common cold, TB, chickenpox, and mumps. Contaminated objects. Some organisms can live on objects for a short time. If you touch an object, such as a doorknob, soon after an infected person, you might be exposed to infection. Transmission occurs when you touch your mouth, nose, or eyes before thoroughly washing your hands. Germs can also be spread through contaminated blood products and medical supplies. Food and drinking water. Infectious diseases can be transmitted via contaminated food and water. E. coli is often transmitted through improperly handled produce or uncooked meat. Animal-to-person contact. Some infectious diseases can be transmitted from an animal to a person. This can happen when an infected animal bites or scratches you, or when you handle cat waste. Some zoonotic infectious agents are transmitted by insects, especially those that suck blood. These include mosquitoes, fleas, and ticks. The insects become infected when they feed on infected hosts such as birds, animals, and humans. The disease is then transmitted when the insect bites a new host. Malaria, West Nile virus, and tick bite fever are all spread this way.
So before we address anything further, all right, let us go back to the film. Now, the whole thing started when James or Jimbo was transporting the monkey. Can you identify the point at which James or Jimbo, just by reflecting, actually got infected by the monkey? Well, if you remembered when he was in the car, the monkey spit the water in his face. That water would contain viruses or whatever the pathogen is that caused the disease, right? Most likely it's a virus, because that is what the movie Outbreak is all about. It's actually about a virus just let loose on a town. Now, Jimbo or James actually got infected when a monkey spat the water in his face. All right, some of the water went in his eyes, in his mouth, so it's gonna go into his body. So Jimbo, being infected, then when he came off the plane at the airport, kissed his girlfriend, and she got infected. Jimbo's blood was taken from him and sent to the lab. Now the vial, now remember that the lab tech was not paying attention. He was actually listening to the game when he carelessly broke the vial, and the vial exploded in his face. All right, with Jimbo's infected blood. He, in fact, in turn, became infected, the lab tech. And the lab tech went to the theater to watch a movie. And in watching the movie, he kept coughing, and all the particulates and droplets from him keep spreading in the theater. And as you can see at the end, everybody in the theater got infected and was rushed, and were all rushed to the hospital, causing a frenzy among the medical staff. Now, in that whole chain of infectious events, you actually had zoonosis taking place. Remember, zoonosis is when an animal infects a human, and in the movie, it was the monkey that actually infected Jimbo when he spat the water in his face. The monkey also infected the pet shop owner when he scratched him on his arm. So there were two cases of zoonosis taking place. However, thereafter, you have the disease actually spreading from person to person. All right, and that disease that was spread from the monkey and then from person to person is what we call a contagious disease. Better word for it, a communicable disease. So a communicable disease, as you can see, was the feature or was the theme in that movie, where everybody from Jimbo all the way to everybody in the theater and the entire town, for the most part, were infected. All right, that's the movie Outbreak, and that was all the way from 1995. Now, does that remind you of anything that we have been through? Yes, it actually reminds us of COVID. In the very same way, COVID was spread from an animal and then to humans, and then humans start spreading it all over. And it's right there at the top of our list, 2019 nCoV. That's the other name for COVID-19, all right, which we have gone through and still going through, but we're handling it a whole lot better. Other communicable diseases that have made their mark over the years, you have Ebola, enterovirus, D68. You got to Google that one. I'm not too sure which one is that. Oh yes, earlier they mentioned TB as a communicable disease. Well, here is TB. TB actually means tuberculosis, and we have it among the list right there. Also in the movie, you had, well, if you watch the movie, you'll hear them talk about the hantavirus. All right, that was also featured in the movie, that name. I think the name of the virus that was actually taking over the entire town was hantavirus. All right, there we have flu. Yes, the regular flu is a communicable disease. You know, it can be passed from one person to the next. Hepatitis A and hepatitis B, both blood diseases, can be passed on from person to person. HIV/AIDS, yes, you know, through bodily fluids, sexual contact, Yeah, all of that can lead to HIV and measles too. Measles is also a communicable disease. If somebody have measles and they touch you or they use a furniture and you sit in that furniture after they have used it, you can get the measles. Then we have pertussis, or what we call whooping cough. Dogs and wild animals like squirrels, for example, are famous for passing on rabies. Then we have other sexually transmitted diseases. Shigellosis, well, you have to Google that one. I can't tell you much about that. West Nile disease, another disease that is actually contracted or passed on by the mosquito. And then we talk about the Zika. Wow, mosquitoes do get a lot of blame, don't they? For such a little creature. Yes, Zika, the Zika virus as well. And if you could recall, chikungunya was another one that was also blamed on the mosquito. And look, malaria. We don't see yellow fever there, but yellow fever is one of those other communicable diseases as well.
This is the story of how cholera changed my village. Tiny germs of cholera, too small to see, spread through the river. So small, yet so dangerous. Without realizing, women carried cholera home in the water. Flies carried cholera on their feet. Unwashed hands spread it too. We swallowed cholera germs in our water, on our food, and on our fingers. It happened so fast. By morning, my father was very sick. He had diarrhea that looked like grey water and poured out of him. I was so scared. I went for help. I never rode so fast. One look at my father and the nurse knew it was cholera. We had to work fast to save him. We made a special drink to help him. First, we made the water safe. We filtered it through cloth and boiled it for 1 minute. Then we mixed half a teaspoon of salt and 6 teaspoons of sugar in 1 liter of this safe water. It tasted like tears, not too salty. I worried my father would die before my eyes, but he soon felt a little stronger. The nurse explained to me that not everyone who swallows cholera germs gets sick like my father, but they can still spread the disease. Now I needed to take safe water to my village and teach them how to protect themselves from cholera. I saw a girl carrying water. I told her she could make the water safe by adding chlorine drops and waiting half an hour. There was a man about to eat with unclean hands. I told him to always wash his hands with soap and safe water after going to the toilet. Only with clean hands could he eat safely. I saw villagers spreading cholera into our river. I told them we needed to dig latrines far from the river, at least 30 meters away. This was important to keep our village clean. I found a mother preparing unsafe food. I told her, first, we must wash our hands with safe water. Then, we had to wash and peel the food, cook it and always eat it hot, and protect it from flies. I spread the word throughout my village and ran to find my father. I was so happy to see he was better. Our village became healthy. Now we filter and boil our water to make sure it is safe. We always use latrines and always wash our hands after. Food is safe from flies, washed and peeled and cooked. And we always wash our hands before cooking and eating. We made our village safe from cholera. Spread the word. Your village can be safe too.
This is the story of how my village survived Ebola. Bats brought the tiny Ebola germs, too small to see, so small, yet so dangerous. Without realizing, Grandfather rubbed a little blood in his eye. Ebola germs came into his body. Days went by. Then Grandfather got a terrible fever and weakness. We thought it was malaria, but he was soon much worse. He had vomiting and diarrhea. His fever got even higher. I ran to get the nurse. But Grandfather had already died. I was heartbroken. The nurse thought it might be Ebola, a disease caught from bush meat, but which spreads from person to person. Others in our region had already died of this new disease. Unless we understood the disease and followed their rules, it could spread further and kill many more people. She explained that Ebola was in the body fluids of someone who was sick or had died of Ebola. Their sweat, tears, mucus, saliva, vomit, diarrhea, urine, breast milk, sexual fluids, and blood. When we touch a sick person's body fluids, the Ebola germs can get into small breaks in our skin or into our eyes, nose, or mouth. The Ebola germs spread into our body and make us sick. When somebody dies of Ebola, that body is much more contagious. No one should ever touch the dead body. The nurse advised us to wash our hands with soap and water right away. She contacted the trained burial team to help us bury Grandfather's body safely. The burial team came. They comforted us and explained what they had to do to protect us. The team wore protective clothing that kept them safe from the dangerous germs. They sprayed Grandfather's room and his body with chlorine to destroy the Ebola germs. They put his body safely away in a bag. To prevent the spread of Ebola, no one could touch the body of anyone who had died with signs of the disease. They also burned his mattress, bedding, and clothes, anything that might have his germs. All these actions made us safer. It was too great a risk to follow all our traditions, but we still honored Grandfather in the time of Ebola. Our chief gathered all the villagers together after Grandfather's death. He explained that it's natural for us to fear Ebola, but if we trust in our health workers and follow their rules, we could stop the disease. The nurse explained to us, when a person has symptoms such as fever, don't touch them. Get them to the treatment center right away. They will have the best chance of surviving and they won't spread Ebola. She advised us to wash our hands with soap and water many times a day. The whole village agreed to follow these rules. Since we all had close contact with Grandfather, we were at risk of getting Ebola. We had to stay home. A health worker visited us every day to see whether we had fever or signs of sickness. We would show signs within 21 days if we had Ebola. Many days passed, and I thought we would all stay healthy. But one morning, I found my mother burning with fever. I knew I couldn't touch her. She was now contagious. My father came in. He told me he was taking my mother away to our uncle's house in the nearby village. He was afraid to take her to the treatment center, afraid he'd never see her again. I knew I had to stop them. I was young, but I stood up to both of them. I told them if this could be Ebola, she must go to the treatment center right away. We needed to trust in our health workers to save her, save ourselves, and save our village. I saw in their faces that they understood. Running away would only lead to more death and suffering. My mother tested positive for Ebola. They found her a bed. At first, the health workers looked scary, but I knew they wore the suits to protect themselves. And inside, they were normal people like the nurse. They took good care of my mother. They gave her fluids, medicine, and food, and helped her body stay strong to fight Ebola. I missed my mother very much, but I could still talk to her on the phone. Sadly, some people in my village didn't survive, but my mother got better day by day. Soon, we were able to see her from a safe distance. One day, the nurse announced that my mother would live. Now we were safe to hug and kiss her. It was a day to celebrate. Our village followed their rules. We trusted our health workers, brought our sick for care right away, called for the safe burial team when one of our people died, and we always wash our hands with soap and water. Our village survived Ebola. Yours can too.
So, geographers, there are three main types of pollution. We have land pollution, air pollution, and water pollution. Such a big word, anthropogenic pollution. Well, what is anthropogenic pollution? It is basically contamination of the inner layers of the nature due to human activities that is performed day by day. In other words, then, it is pollution caused by humans or human activities. For example, when we drive our cars and our vehicles release all that exhaust in the atmosphere, that is anthropogenic pollution. We burn our garbage, anthropogenic pollution. We incorrectly dispose of our garbage in areas that they are not supposed to be disposed of. That is anthropogenic pollution. But don't take my word for it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So we have factories, for example, burning fossil fuels. That is a form of anthropogenic pollution. As you can see there, air pollution, garbage, polluting the land, anthropogenic pollution. All right, and now we have to look at some natural air pollutants. I don't know why they call them natural air pollutants, but well, let's see what we have here. Radon, fog, mist, ozone, ash, as well as volcanic ash. All of these are considered to be natural pollutants. Well, in the case of the volcano, we understand why it is a natural pollutant. So what are the effects of the various types of pollution? Let's look at air pollution. What are the effects of air pollution? Well, one, it can cause respiratory problems. Believe it or not, people, even if you are not born with asthma, if you live in an area that is highly polluted or the air is highly polluted, you can actually develop asthma over time, and even worse, lung cancer. Yes, you don't have to be a smoker of cigarettes to develop lung cancer. There are cases where people who live in highly polluted cities or industrialized cities that over time developed lung cancer. It can also cause acid rain. Yes, all those harmful chemicals go in the atmosphere can pollute the rainwater and create what is called acid rain, which can destroy or corrode metal and even cause skin damages, all right, to creatures like you and me. It can also lead to global warming, most definitely. It can cause the depletion of the ozone layer, which is that thin layer in our stratosphere that protects us from the harmful UV rays of the sun. All right, so our air pollutants can also damage that layer. And finally, it can also affect our animals, our wildlife. So this is the diagram of the Earth, and that area that you see, anybody knows what island is that, or what continent is that being featured? Starts with the letter A, it's to the South Pole. That is what we, right, very good. That is Antarctica. And right over Antarctica, we have a layer of the ozone layer, all right? And the reason why we're seeing it so clear is because it's actually telling us that the ozone layer has been depleted there, all right, because of the air pollution. And when it happens, in the long run, this is what's going to happen. Global warming, all right, on a scale that is unimaginable. Our planet will be burning up, definitely. Here we have a forest that has been destroyed or damaged by acid rain. This is somewhere in North America. I'm sure it's near an industrialized city. Next one, land pollution. What are the effects of land pollution? Well, one, groundwater poisoning. A lot of times people dispose of containers that once contained harmful chemicals, or even improperly used chemicals that will seep through the soil and go down all the way into our underground water supply, and that can poison our water storage. And there have been a lot of cases where communities have their piped water having discolorations or unpleasant odors or taste, and it's all because of improper disposal of garbage, especially those that contain harmful chemicals. It can lead to, which could eventually lead to soil pollution as well, all right? And changes in the climate patterns. Yes, it can also cause changes in the climate pattern. Remember, improper disposal of garbage can lead to production of or generation of methane, and this is also considered to be a greenhouse gas that can eventually contribute to climate change. It can cause air pollution. Yes, whenever we improperly dispose garbage or any other pollutants on the land, it can also produce very, very strong bad odors and therefore lead to air pollution as well, especially when they are rotting. And it can also affect wildlife. We see where people have actually thrown plastic, for example, or any other solid waste on land and think that it's not going to be harm to anything or anyone. And some of these pollutants that we throw on the land, garbage for example, gets washed into a storm drain and are washed out into the sea, like in Kingston Harbor for example. And sea creatures like turtles or large fish can actually ingest these or get trapped in them, and they can eventually get strangled or suffocate or even die because it's been clogged up in their digestive system. So we have to be careful whenever we are disposing our garbage. It may not look like it's going to affect or do anything to anything or anyone, but believe you me, it does happen. And even the other day I did a video at Hellshire Beach, and if you had seen how polluted Hellshire Beach was on that day. It's not people having frolicking along the beach that actually caused it, but it's garbage that were thrown on the land in nearby areas like Kingston, for example, that were washed into the harbor, and the waves carried all the way into Hellshire. The same thing happened along the coast of Whitehorses in St. Thomas. I guarantee you, a lot of the plastic and other solid waste that are along the shore in that area were actually thrown on the land in nearby urban settlements as far as Kingston and washed all the way to Morant Bay, or should I say along the Whitehorse area in St. Thomas. Finally, the effects of water pollution. Now, what will happen if our water is polluted? Well, it will lead to groundwater contamination. It will also lead to the growth of algae, that green slimy stuff that grows in the water. Yes, algae feeds off pollution or pollutants. It can cause health problems. Whenever we drink the water, yeah, we can get sick. It also can contaminate our food chain. So the fish, for example, or any other marine or sea creature or water or aquatic creature that we consume, like shrimp, fish, they will consume whatever poisonous or harmful substance that is in the water. And when we eat these creatures now, we end up getting poisoned just the same. And well, you know what happens eventually, we get sick. And there are cases where people actually die as a result. It will affect aquatic life, as I just mentioned, and will also kill marine or sea creatures. Aquatic life meaning other water creatures, all right? Not necessarily sea creatures. That is what we consider to be marine life. Now, we're strange enough, pollution of our atmosphere, all right? Pollution leads to the increase in our atmospheric temperatures, and it can affect us dramatically, especially where vector-borne diseases are concerned. Now, you have areas that are highly industrialized, right? And because they're industrialized, they tend to produce a lot of greenhouse gases that increases global temperatures. Now, because areas that used to be too cold for certain vectors like mosquitoes, for example, right? All of a sudden, because of global warming, these areas become warm, so warm to the point where mosquitoes, for example, and other vectors that rely on warm climate actually move into that area and infect people and other animals in these areas. So you have vector-borne diseases prevailing in these areas as a result. Why? Because of global warming. So areas that used to be too cold for mosquitoes to or other vectors to survive or to thrive become too warm, and because they get so warm, mosquitoes and other vectors that rely on warm temperature can move into these areas and infect animals and people alike. So you have vector-borne disease spreading as a result. In other words, then, their area of breeding has now expanded. You will also have an increase in rainfall, and you'll have flooding taking place as a result. And you have to understand, vectors love to breed in moist conditions, especially mosquitoes. And these are areas where they can safely breed and lay their eggs and eventually populate these areas, because they are easily migrating into these areas now as a result of global warming. All right. All right, now geographers, we have come to the end of our lecture series today. I hope you enjoyed it. Please continue to love the subject and work hard. Remember, you can always rewind this video just to ensure that you understand the lesson a whole lot better. I appreciate you listening, and I'm your host, Donovan Rattray. Have yourselves a great day. Take care and continue to love this beautiful subject of geography.